Look at this map. This map is made by a Wagner military blogger, a pro-Russian military blogger. Do you notice something off with this map? Do you mean these huge Ukrainian gains? Yes, I mean these huge Ukrainian gains. On a Wagner military blogger map. What's going on? There have been more Ukrainian counteroffensive near Bakhmut, and they have been successful. In this video we'll go through them all one by one, so get your popcorn. What better way to start than the clown himself? The counteroffensive is in full swing. The armed forces of Ukraine are entering the flanks of Bakhmut. Further, they will enter the territory of Bryansk and Belgorod, Russia. These are the words of Yevgeny Prigozhin. Let's watch the video.
Контрнаступление идет полным ходом. На Артемовском направлении подразделения ВСУ заходят во фланги. И, к сожалению, в части мест это успешно, у них получается. Мы дальше идем в Артемовске для того, чтобы его захлопнуть. Как я уже и говорил много раз, план ВСУ в действии. Мы идем, захлопываем их, они захлопывают нас. Для ВСУ важно сейчас проломить Артемовское направление. Следующими направлениями будут Брянская, Белгородская область с выходом на территорию РФ и Запорожье.
Well, let's pause for a moment. Prigozhin has lost the bulk of his men striking Bakhmut, advancing 10 meters at a time in the city center and around the city. If Ukrainians are counteroffensing on the flanks and not in the city, that means all of this advancing building by building is pointless if Bakhmut's flanks will be insecure. He is losing it. He's very mad because he's in the city. The flanks are defended by the Russian army, not Wagner. He cannot really do anything to defend the flanks, so he is scared. Also, he claims Ukrainians will cross the Russian border and take some villages and settlements in Belgorod Oblast. Fear has big eyes, my friends.
Им нужно сначала разобраться с Артемовским направлением ЧВК «Вагнер», закончить эту историю и после этого на подъеме со всем боевым духом идти в Запорожье, Брянскую, Белгородскую. Поэтому наступление ВСУ началось. Те части, которые прошли подготовку, получили необходимую вооружение, технику, танки и все остальное, они уже...
I gotta bring sad news to Prigozhin. These attacks happened around Bakhmut, yes, and he claims the counteroffensive is in full swing, but Ukrainians haven't even showed a fraction of their forces. We're talking about an area of about 50 kilometers where all of this happens.
Уже полностью задействованы. И после того, как они попробуют свои силы, разомнут мускулы, то дальше будут задействованы северное направление и южное направление. ЧВК «Вагнер» продолжает выполнять боевые задачи в жутком дефиците боеприпасов, снарядном голоде, поскольку все обещания, которые были даны Министерством обороны, не исполнены. А каким образом мы идем, я вам потом расскажу, когда добью.
When we capture Bakhmut, we're looking at the situation honestly. Wagner might be able to capture Bakhmut just to be encircled by the Ukrainians. We'll go through the news one by one, don't worry, we're gonna get to everything. The Russian military bloggers, the panic, the breakthroughs, but I just wanna finish with the clown Prigozhin, because you gotta admit he's entertaining. Prigozhin is so worried, so panicked, that he actually wrote an official letter to the Russian Ministry of Defense asking, pleading Shoigu, the defense minister of Russia, to come to Bakhmut and to see things with his own eyes. Now, it's never going to happen. Shoigu is never going to Bakhmut. But the fact that Prigozhin put down his pride and wrote this personal letter to the Minister of Defense, that shows how worried and scared he is. And I, for once, love seeing this. Okay, let's go into what really happened around Bakhmut. In the previous video, we witnessed one of the localized Ukrainian counteroffensives inside Bakhmut city center, taking back one of the Russian bridgeheads over the Bakhmutske stream or river. It was about 2-3 square kilometers they liberated. That was very good news. Today things are different. Ukraine has done it again, but this time the flanks outside of Bakhmut. Yesterday evening, a panic set into the Russian military bloggers' channels and it spread like wildfire. The tone was that the counteroffensive has begun and Ukrainian forces have pushed through the Russian defensive lines near Bakhmut. I'm not saying how things were, I'm saying how the Russian military bloggers saw them. Even Igor Kirkin, the terrorist, has now said that Ukrainian forces will capture settlements in Russia, in Belgorod region and in Kursk region, in Russian territory. This is what they really believe, that Ukraine will command their forces over the Russian border and occupy some Russian territories. Let's check it out from the military map for a moment. Bakhmut, Russians control most of the city, but what happened? Let's go forward. It's 10th of May, 11th of May, bada boom! We see this. You see these blue areas and the green area. On this map you can see what exactly happened yesterday. Ukrainians strike towards Klishchivka, this settlement right here. If Ukrainians are fast and efficient enough, they could connect these two striking groups here, connecting to Klishchivka, putting this grouping in here into a bag if they don't pull out. There are many Russian trench lines in this area right here, and there are reports that Russian units left these trench lines in a panic yesterday, that they ran away, running back from these areas to avoid encirclement, running back, and Russian units in Klishchivka saw these troops running back and they also abandoned some of their positions. We don't know anything for sure, but we know that some of the Russian positions have been abandoned. Ukrainians broke through the first Russian defensive line. They have many defensive lines. They broke through the first line. These same probing attacks happened all over north of Bakhmut also. This here is Soledar, a very hot area. Ukrainians striked all over this front line. About 30 kilometers north to Bakhmut, strikes happened into the Russian defensive lines, breaking through in some areas. This is in no way indication that Russian front lines have collapsed. I'm not saying this. Russians have many defensive lines and their defenses run deep into the rear. But Ukrainians have penetrated the first defensive lines in some areas. Now let's look at the map, what the Russian military bloggers are afraid of, what they think the Ukrainian plan is. This here is Bakhmut. As you can see in this area, all of these arrows, their fears are that Ukrainians are trying to encircle Bakhmut, not trying to fight and liberate it through city center, but not do the urban warfare like the Russians did, because that is very costly on equipment and manpower, but just encircle it. That is enough to make Russians lose Bakhmut, to take them into a bag. This here is Soledar, and according to Russian fears, the Ukrainians are striking even north from Soledar, cutting Soledar off and then cutting to the east of Bakhmut. And they do the same from south of Bakhmut, connecting with the northern forces, leaving the whole Bakhmut area into a bag. And we don't know that Russia holds a huge contingent of forces and Wagner in the Bakhmut area. If they would be encircled, this would be a huge, major loss to the Russian armed forces. I can understand how they are afraid of this. And I could even understand if this actually was the Ukrainian plan. Noel reports, the Twitter account, link in the description below, summarizes the Russian panic perfectly. These are the points that the Russian military bloggers are spreading right now. Some of them are true, some of them are false. Armed forces of Ukraine encirclements near Bakhmut and Yagidne, plus breakthroughs near the Soledar area, that is north from Bakhmut. Local success by the Ukrainian army in Mayorsk near Kharlivka. Ukrainian columns spotted near Belgorod area. Belgorod, Russia. A huge Ukrainian mechanized column was spotted driving towards the Russian border near Belgorod area, and Russian military bloggers immediately took this and stated that Ukrainians plan to attack over the border and take some settlements in Belgorod area. Let me put some cold water on this one. Ukraine will not strike over the Russian border. I'm sorry if you don't want to hear this message, but this is unfortunately out of their options. I think they have the right to do this, but they will conduct this war in accordance with their Western allies who supply the weapons. Almost all of the allies agree that Ukraine should not attack into Russia with their forces. And I don't think Ukraine would go over these boundaries. So I really believe Ukraine will not cross into Russia. Only Russian occupied areas of Ukraine. But Russian military bloggers don't know this or don't believe this. They're afraid of it. Then there's the Ukrainian chemical attack in Rehi. Yeah, right. And then Ukrainian amphibious assault units arrived near Yaroslav to supposedly cross the Dnipro river. That is what the Russians are afraid of. I mean, if you see Ukrainian amphibious units near the Dnipro river in some area, you immediately assume that they're gonna cross it. Let's go over it one more time very fast. This here is the Dnipro, this here is the Yaroslav, and Russians saw Ukrainian amphibious units right here, perhaps crossing over the Dnipro right here. They're expecting an attack to the Kakhovka area. A very important area for the Russians, a lot of fear about this. Second area, Rehi right here. Supposedly Ukrainians made a chemical attack right here. They didn't. Then there is Bakhmut, of course, and a little bit south and about 30 kilometers north from Bakhmut. Assaults to the Russian defensive lines in some places, breaking through the first trench lines, making Russians flee in some areas. This really happened. And then finally, we go way up in north. Right, this is Kursk, this is Belgorod. Igor Kirkin and the Russian military bloggers are afraid that Ukrainians will strike over this Russian border because some of the outlooks saw our Ukrainian mechanized column advancing towards this border. So they're expecting attacks from here, from the north, from Bakhmut and Soledar, and over the Dnipro. They're expecting the counteroffensive from basically all over the place. They cannot defend one place then. This is why it was so important for Ukraine to get the initiative in the information war in their own hands. This panic does not allow Russian forces to concentrate their defenses. They have to defend all over the place because there are imaginary enemies all over the place. Ukraine has conducted a perfect information war. Let's keep a cool head. Just yesterday, moments before it all happened, this is what Zelensky had to say about the counteroffensive. Let's watch.
Пане президенте, я вже тут кілька тижнів, і мені здається, майже кожна розмова, яка в мене тут була, стосувалася такого очікуваного українського контрнаступу. Чи готові ви до цього контрнаступу?
Морально готові. З точки зору мотивації наші військові готові. З точки зору комплектації бригад ми готові. З точки зору техніки не все ще дійшло. Ось вам і відповідь.
Отже, ви досі чекаєте на зброю і деякі види військового обладнання, поставки якого були обіцяні.
Деякі речі ми дійсно очікуємо, це посилить наш контрнаступ. А найголовніше – це захистить наших людей. Ми очікуємо відповідну броньовану техніку.
Yeah, they are waiting for equipment. This is official President of Ukraine's answer. Are you ready for the counteroffensive? And if he says that we are not ready, we're waiting for equipment moments before all of this happens. It is happening in Bakhmut. We have reports, real reports on the ground that there were these breakthroughs, localized breakthroughs. From my perspective, the chemical attack is a lie. Crossing the Dnipro might be a lie, and definitely crossing into Russia is just fear with big eyes. So all I would put credit to is the Bakhmut and Soledar area breakthroughs, which are happening on a 30 to 50 kilometer front line, making them very localized. And Prigozhin is screaming that the counteroffensive is in full swing.
Вона заходить частинами, але з тією кількістю можна йти вперед, і можна, мені здається, мати успіх, але ми будемо втрачати дуже багато людей. І я вважаю, що це не можна.
He said we could begin, but we would be losing a lot of people, so we have to wait. This is what Zelensky said before this all happened. So I would still put my money on that this is a localized breakthrough and Ukrainians are messing around in Bakhmut, taking back some areas. I don't think it's the big thing yet. Also, they're waiting for what? CV-90s from Sweden, for example, infantry fighting vehicles. These will give a huge boost to Ukraine and they don't have them yet. They should be arriving very soon now. I think Ukraine will wait for them. We will watch one more video from a Ukrainian defender, Taras Dayak, commander of the Karpatska Special Purpose Unit. And this came out also just before it all came down in Bakhmut.
Ми розминаємо кліщі, скажімо так, тому що відступили вони і нанесли удар ЗСУ саме по флангам. І дійсно фланги дуже тріщать у противника. Наша розвідка про це доповідала, наша розвідка за цим спостерігала. І дійсно планувалися ряд заходів, котрі продовжуються і в навіть даний час. Відповідно, нам це дає змогу наступну – спокійніше заїжджати, скажімо, в місто, спокійніше будувати логістику. Хоча ситуація в самому місті не найкраща. Ситуація в самому місті Бахмут дуже важка, дуже напружена.
It is so weird, it's truly like an onion. Inside the city, Ukrainian armed forces are under enormous pressure from Wagner and Russian forces. But outside, the flanks, the Russian flanks are weak. So if Ukrainians penetrate through the flanks, they don't want to go into the city. Urban warfare is not Ukrainian style. So what they would do is they would surround the city, meaning that Ukrainian forces are fighting Russian forces inside the city, and Russian forces are actually advancing very slowly. But surrounding the city are Ukrainian forces. So we don't know who has it more difficult right now, near Bakhmut or inside it.
Десь і не контрольована, тому що треба говорити деколи і про правду. Тому, да, ми маємо певний успіх на півдні, розминаючи, б'ючи їм у фланг, але в місті все погано. Дійсно, противник окупував дуже велику частину міста. Ми дійсно десь контролюємо біля 15% Бахмуту. Ми тримаємося, ми тримаємо.
In the western part of Bakhmut, there are more buildings that are not destroyed, and they're higher than the eastern side of Bakhmut. So these buildings have an overlook to the whole of Bakhmut, the city center and the eastern side. So Ukrainians control those. I wouldn't want to call them high-rise building, but higher, taller buildings on the western side in the 15% area that they control. And this projects their fire, small arms fire and anti-tank and everything, projects it all over the city. So Russians really want to get the last 15%, but it's difficult because how they advance is they bombard the buildings to the ground with artillery. But they are now running out of ammunition, as we all know. So taking those last buildings, last 15%, is proving incredibly difficult for them.
Багатоповерхівки, це стратегічно, в принципі, зараз вже поверхівки, які стоять після військової частини у самому місті.
The breakthroughs in Bakhmut are not the only thing panicking the Russian military channels. There's another thing. Storm Shadow. No, I'm not talking about some weird sponsor. Storm Shadow is not a mobile app game. It's a United Kingdom's cruise missile. And UK sent them to Ukraine. They're already in Ukraine right now. And the first thing the Russian military bloggers are afraid of now is the Crimean bridge. Oh, immediately as the Ukrainians get the Storm Shadow, they will strike the bridge. Storm Shadow is a long-range cruise missile, and it has stealth capabilities, meaning it's very hard to shoot down. It's typically launched from the air. It has a range of 250 kilometers or 155 miles, which is very similar to the United States attack MS, which they have not supplied, the long-range attack MS. So Ukraine basically has the capability now. What I have to say about the panicking Russian military bloggers, all you have to do is just be careful where you smoke. Don't smoke carelessly. Mind your cigarette butts, because they might go boom. You don't gotta worry about the Crimean bridge. Just don't smoke there. But I know you will. I mean, the Russians, they will smoke carelessly. We cannot do anything about it. And also the thing is, if these Storm Shadow missiles would have arrived a few months earlier, it would have truly changed the game. But now Ukraine has shown us that they are able to explode in the Russian rear areas 200 kilometers away almost daily now. I mean, they have the capability through their own produced drones. So I don't think these Storm Shadows, very necessary, very good. Another line crossed where Western countries will give even more powerful weaponry to Ukraine, but it doesn't give much to the capability that the Ukraine already has. The thing it does give is that drones are easier to shoot down, and these Storm Shadow missiles are very difficult to shoot down, so now Ukraine can even explode deeper into the Russian rear areas. I'm sorry, it just comes out like that. In this photo you can see the newest, baddest Russian tank on the battlefield. It is a true beast. A T-55 with a cope cage. Ooh, I would be afraid of that. Invisible to radars. Impossible to take out with anti-tank weapons. Javelin proof. It has an active armor and laser defense. And the copism is over 9,000. On the 9th of May, Den Babede for Russians, the most important day, Zannat Akhmadyarov brought a toilet to the monument of the Soviet commander Zhukov. He was arrested and might be charged of hooliganism. He might be put to prison for years for this. But the thing is, Zhukov, the Soviet commander, the leader of the Soviet forces against the Nazi Germany, he brought back over 40 toilets from Berlin. Nothing really changes. I mean, they didn't have toilets back then. Germany did. They still don't have toilets. Akhmadyarov just brought out the fact that Zhukov started the tradition that the Russian soldiers carry on now, stealing toilets. I don't think he should be put to jail for honoring the Russian tradition. Ukrainians continued to show their human side. In the last video I mentioned how Ukrainian frontline units adopt stray dogs and cats and take care of them. Even when they move around, they take the animals with them. In this video we can see a Ukrainian soldier bringing his art and his capabilities to the front lines. He's decorating the trench wall. Although any Russian shell at any moment might destroy this trench wall, I'd feel very bad for it. This is beautiful. Ukrainians keep showing us their human side. My friends, thank you for watching and thank you for being with me. Now, in the last video I asked you to bring me Patreon names tier 10 or above, which are impossible to pronounce. Let's see if you have delivered. Let's begin. Krek. Come on, this is easy, not a problem at all. Poppy Retrf. Ron Mackay. Nicholas Sloan. Kevin Scott Hayes. Thank you to these 5 people for becoming a patron. If you like my channel, If you like my style, Patron is the quickest and fastest way to support. The link is in the description below. Let me butcher your name. Also, if you want these news in Twitter, if you like to scroll Twitter and read fast compilations of news about the war of Ukraine, my Twitter link is in the description below. You won't be disappointed. I also have Instagram where I post, for example, gun content, because I cannot post that on YouTube for some reason. Shooting some pew-pews, as Demolition Ranch puts it. Link in the description below. Until my next video, my friends. Slava Ukraini.